Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Habois, or Hebo, or like he do damage. Habois is the classic one-shot combo mage of SMITE. For 10 actual real-life years, this guy's been pressing 3 buttons and waving goodbye to anyone who was unlucky enough to be anywhere near him at the time. Habois is solid in both the mid lane and the jungle role, although if you're new to the character, the mid lane is going to be the safer call. Then once you're more comfortable with him, you can keep him in your pocket as a mage jungler. Build-wise, Habois loves damage, and that should be your focus, but he also heavily benefits from things like lifesteal and movement speed, as he needs to be at closer range than most mages to hit absolutely everything. So the movement speed gets him in range, and that lifesteal helps him sustain through the damage that he will inevitably take for being in said range. He doesn't need movement speed and lifesteal, but those options are definitely something to keep in mind when you're trying to find your groove with Habois. Relics wise, Habois is a rare case of a mage who really benefits from Blink. Beads of course should be your initial relic when you're just starting with him, but Blink is very important for Habois in the later stages of the game where he really struggles to get in there and deal his damage without dying. One of the main things that helps Habois do that damage is his passive. Every time Habois casts an ability, regardless of whether or not it hits anything, he gains 5% bonus power, stacking up to 3 times and lasting for 5 seconds. If you're at max stacks and use an ability, you will reset the 5-second duration timer. Old passives. This is something you want to keep afloat by spamming your abilities and constantly going for poke, but it can be a beginner's trap in this regard. Keep in mind that you only need to cast 3 abilities to get it stacked, and frankly, Habois' damage is so high that even without this passive, you really don't need a full passive to one-shot someone with a full combo. So certainly try to get a bunch of abilities out before using your ultimate in order to utilize this passive, but don't try so hard to keep it up that you run your mana into the ground, which by the way is very easy to do on Habois. Speaking of mana and passive management, let's talk about the biggest factor in these aspects, his first ability. Habois fires a damaging cone AoE that damages all enemies, and that's about it. More important than the damage and range is the cooldown, one of the lowest cooldowns in the game at a base 3 seconds. So this easily lets you keep your passive up while dealing insane damage over and over and over again, but at a price. Starting at a measly 40 but going all the way up to 80 mana, spamming this ability is tempting but a surefire way to drain your mana. So you really want to slither about looking for opportunities to splash people when you know it's going to make a real impact and not just tickle people. Unfortunately for Habois, this is worsened by this being his best wave clear ability, which obviously does not hit the entire wave without bunching it all up first, which Habois can't really do effectively. So you really need to pace yourself in the mid lane to keep your mana afloat, and it's part of why Habois is often seen as a jungler, despite technically being a mid laner, since he can get all the farm he needs in the jungle without having to expend his entire mana pool constantly just to maintain wave pressure. Not to mention spamming this ability becomes all the more attainable thanks to Habois' second ability. Habois lays down a long carpet which grants himself and all allies movement speed, and just as importantly makes him immune to slows, and don't forget, grants you a stack of passive. It lasts for a whopping 7 seconds, and also as importantly, goes on cooldown as soon as you use it, meaning that even with a bit of CDR, you have access to another carpet almost exactly when the first one despawns. As I'm sure you can guess, this ability also slows all enemies that walk over it as well, and let me just say, whether this ability is speeding someone up or slowing them down, it makes an enormous impact. Habois may not be the best mage in the game, and he hasn't been for some time, but this ability is easily one of the best pure utility abilities in the game. Of course, you never want to use this while laning other than when escaping or setting up for a gank, because again, mana issues. But in fights and skirmishes, it's actually something you want to be placing out over and over and over again, rather than waiting for the one big moment for your team to get in or out with it. Rather you and your team, and thereby the enemy team, play around this carpet during team fights. The placement of the carpet is pretty self-explanatory in the jungle. Just place it at a slight angle and you can easily cover a huge amount of distance with it. In lanes it's a bit trickier since your opponents can kinda, not be where the carpet is. With Habois carpet, you just want to keep placing it over and over again, as close as you can get to the enemy without putting yourself in danger. And then of course, once you or your team are in danger, turn tail and place it again to get out. Playing around the carpet of course involves running up with the movement speed to splash enemies with your 1, then running back to safety. More often though, Habois uses his carpet to get in range for his third ability. Habois fires a water spout from the ground which can be fired at range and over walls, damaging and knocking up all enemies. Now this ability doesn't really need too much explanation. It's your go-to poke tool when your first ability is too stubby. It helps you clear the wave early on, and of course most importantly is an insane setup tool for your first ability and or ultimate. If you're not aware already, in SMITE, when someone is knocked up, they are unable to use beads to get out of it, and more importantly, they can't use any sort of immunities like Aegis while they're knocked up. So once you hit that knock up, they're all yours. One thing to keep in mind though is that the direction they're knocked up in is determined by the direction the enemy is currently moving, as in you don't really have control over it and need to react to whatever direction they're knocked up in. Mind you, this isn't exactly difficult since Habois' follow-up consists of a medium distance cone and a wide AoE dash. Hellboy becomes CC and damage immune after a short windup, and dashes forward in this new waveform, heavily damaging any and all enemies. Firstly though, let's talk about how to use this ability as an escape. While there is a short windup, that CC and damage immunity is nearly instant, so it's extremely easy to react to incoming CC and damage. Luckily so far you've had the question of how you're supposed to, not die immediately in teamfights at the back of your mind, and this ultimate is how. You need to either ult out to avoid danger or try to position yourself in such a way that if you do get jumped on, you can reply by instantly ulting whoever jumped on you or by ignoring whoever jumped on you and ulting onto a different target. All that said, you will die a lot in Hellboy. It's just a part of playing him. You do as much damage as you can in every fight and then end up usually dying. So you're going to really want to learn and understand the range and speed of this ability. It goes further than you think. Because while it's fine to ult out of a fight, then do the best you can with your core kit, getting ult on just one squishy target can be all it takes to break a team fight wide open. So that should be your priority over trying to live forever in a fight. This sort of assassin playstyle is, again, why you see Hellboy in the jungle so much, since you can have more of a consistent range of magical damager on your team in the mid lane, in addition to the absolute one-shot machine that is Hellboy. Regardless of whether or not you're in the jungle or the mid lane, you'll need some combos. So let's get to them. 2, 1, basic attack. 2, 3, 1, basic attack. 2, 3, ult, basic attack, 1, basic attack. Blink, ult, 3, basic attack, 2, 1. Blink within ult range, and ult at the 3 knocks your intended target up. For ability leveling, you want your 1 at level 1, your 3 at level 2, and your 1 at level 3 again, and finally leveling your 2 at level 4. From there you want to level your 1, your 3, then your 2. Leveling the ult whenever you can. You can opt to skip leveling your 2 entirely until your 1 and your 3 are completely maxed for more damage, but this is risky when you're new to the character. Hellboy is, mechanically, a very simple character. Place down your 2, try to get in range for your 1 and or 3, then follow up with your ultimate. Job done. But then you get jumped on by an assassin or a warrior and you get absolutely obliterated. Of course, you can always just ult away to avoid that fate, but now you're stuck with a decent, albeit stubby mage, needing to rely on your teammates to pull through while you try and throw out your 3 as much as you can. So what's the key to avoiding this fate? The number one thing with Hellboy is positioning, as well as adjusting your positioning on the fly. Typically you need to be standing near your support and watching their every move, as when they engage and or hit any form of CC, it's your time to shine with a blink 3 and or 2-3 to get in and try and hit the ult of the century. Sometimes it takes both your blink and beads to get it done, but seriously, just hit one ultimate on one squishy target and that team fight is over. Naturally, not every match is going to be against the highest level players in the world, and sometimes you'll get against some pretty good matches for Hellboy and he will feel a lot better. But with the prevalence of gods like Set, Susano, Thor, and Atlas, it can be really tricky to pull Hellboy off sometimes and not feel like you're getting trampled every game. He's still one of the highest damaging and engrossing characters to play though, and the payoff for hitting a max range 3 or good ultimate is always extremely satisfying. That's all I have on Hellboy for now. Thanks for watching.